Friends, welcome to Leadosophy, another episode. I am glad and humbled that you've joined me today. Remember, Leadosophy, you are here with an open mind because that is the rule and not the exception. Today's episode is going to be a little follow-on from my journey in Topanga State Park down in beautiful Malibu. I talked about technical competence and I talked about leadership competence. And I want to dive into that subject a little further, not in hopes that I'm going to find some sort of earth-shattering truth, because this program is not so much about finding an exact truth, but rather to deepen the meaning of what we're exploring, whatever subject we're exploring. And I like to use philosophy as kind of the means to do that, and that involves asking a lot of questions. So I hope you enjoy this episode coming up on technical competence and leadership competence and their relationship, or maybe a non-relationship that is for us to explore together. So thanks for joining, and hope you like the show.
Are you ready to permanently fuse leadership and philosophy? Then a word of caution. You are about to enter the fully abstract yet wholly concrete realm of Leadosophy. Our ideas are not always so clear and distinct. To validate this proposition, we welcome the host of Leadosophy, Tim Woody.
Welcome back. So I had the weekend to, I guess, reflect and self-reflect on my last episode. And I kind of ended the last episode during my hike, kind of trying to reiterate that I wasn't placing extra importance, or I wasn't trying to place all the importance on technical competence. I think when it comes to technical competence, when you're in a relationship with other people, your role, whether at work or, in the community, I think the golden rule still applies. I believe it. I believe strongly that the golden rule still applies. Treat others how you want to be treated. So in the course of your day-to-day job or whatever you're doing, from a technical competence standpoint, when you're showing people how to be better at their positions or to improve their skills, the golden rule, right? How you're treating them in the course of showing them something, I think that plays a huge part on the leadership competence side. Some other housekeeping things that came up from the last episode. I was kind of making fun or making light of the fact that I didn't bring water on my little hike through the mountainous desert, and kind of threw out the funny little saying that my wife probably thought I was an idiot for not bringing water, and she was upset. She was sad that I would say that I would say that she, might have labeled me an idiot. That was strong words, and I want to apologize to her. So she doesn't want the audience to think that she's a mean person, because she's not. She's truly wonderful, and a big supporter. She's one of my biggest fans of Leadosophy. One of my biggest fans. She supports the endeavor, the pursuit of knowledge, deepening our understanding of leadership, using the tools of philosophical thought. So I must always incorporate her ideas and, admit I'm wrong if I may have said something kind of off base. So this is my formal apology to my 5 followers that I used some strong language that I shouldn't have. So she doesn't think I'm an idiot. She likes me a lot. So I appreciate that. She did bring something up, though. She asked a question after my last episode, and I thought I would give my thoughts on it. She asked me, is it the same? Is our self-reflection and reflection the same concept? And I don't think they are. I think reflection, when we reflect, I think we are reflecting kind of the world around us, the events that happen around us, how they affect us. But I think self-reflection is where we turn that gaze completely inward our own actions, our thoughts, maybe some of the deeper nuances that are happening in the brain and the cognitive functions, and kind of how they affect us, ourselves, the self. So I do hold reflection and self-reflection as separate concepts. And that was kind of, I don't know if I explained that very well to her. And it applies to leadership, and it applies to technical competence, of what we're going to talk about here. Because as a leader, I believe, Leadosophy believes, that you should continually strive to reflect on the events around you, your interactions with those events around you, and self-reflect internally on how you're feeling, or how you are, your conduct in the world of leadership, or in the pursuit of technical competence or technical mastery. I think self-reflection and reflection go together. I think they're separate concepts, but they complement one another. And I think that kind of is a good segue into what we're going to talk here about leaders and followers. And we are going to discuss, again, separate concepts that I think are related somehow, that I am still exploring. And if you're listening and not watching, what I have on the screen here is Leadosophy loves Venn diagrams. Venn diagrams love Leadosophy. I'm a big fan of Venn diagrams, 2 circles, 3 circles, whatever they are. I like Venn diagrams because they show relationships between 2 concepts. And sometimes they're abstract concepts. Sometimes they're very concrete concepts. And I think we're more in the realm of abstract here, with 2 different circles, one circle being leadership competence and the other circle being technical competence. And I brought this up before on another episode, but I have up on the screen, chicken or the egg, what comes first? Do we seek leadership competence before we seek technical competence? Or is it the other way around? Do we seek to master our craft first? Maybe it's a solo journey, which I argue it cannot be. There's always got to be other people. None of our ideas kind of just happen in a vacuum, or probably very rare if they do. Those ideas are compounded by other ideas from other people. But are we seeking technical competence first, and then the leadership competence stuff follows from that? Or is it a simultaneous endeavor? As we seek to become better at our position or at our job, does it follow that we naturally, when we have other people around us, we are developing our leadership skills alongside our technical competence skills? All right. So I have some questions to start off here. Leadosophy likes questions. I think questions are the foundation of philosophical thought. Questions are the foundation of spirited inquiry, period. How can you deepen your understanding of something, of any subject, if you're not asking questions? And those questions you can ask on your own. You don't need someone else to ask the questions for you. But the first idea I have up here is, can you have technical competence without leadership competence? I think you can. Remember, leadership is non-existent in the absence of another person, right? And I wrote up there examining our relationships with others. A dyadic relationship, minimum of 2, is required for a leadership situation to occur, or the preconditions for leadership to happen. So I believe you can have technical competence without leadership competence. People are on solo journeys every day learning, whether it's a trip across country by yourself. Maybe you're on a solo journey on a bike, or a hike by yourself on the Appalachian Trail. I believe there are instances where you can gain technical competence in the absence of others. But I don't know if you can have leadership competence without technical competence. And that's just me. That's just my initial gut reaction to this question that I put up there. People seek us out. They seek our leadership. And I have this at the bottom too. People seek our leadership for a reason. What are those reasons that people seek our leadership? Why do followers seek the leader? Again, those are questions we can examine deeper. Maybe not today, but something you can think about as you're listening or, after the episode. The next idea I have are what are the ways we develop technical competence? What are the ways we develop our leadership competence? PRT, I have the building blocks of Leadosophy are practice, reflection, and theory. Do we use that idea for both developing our technical competence? Do we use that for developing our leadership competence? I think it goes without saying to develop a technical competence in any craft, it's got to be a hands-on endeavor. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to tinker. You have to do all these things to learn the craft. And then obviously there's, theory that goes in with any craft. I'm going to talk about the shipbuilding analogy. I like the shipbuilding analogy because it is very concrete. And I like the ocean. I like the water. I was on boats for a very long time in the Coast Guard. So the shipbuilder analogy is very fluid to me. And I think it applies to both leadership competence and technical competence. But then we examine this idea of practice, reflection, and theory. Does that work for developing our leadership skills, our behaviors in leading others? This assumes, again, Leadosophy is about digging up assumptions. This assumes that leadership is a skill. I'll ask the audience, do you believe that leadership is a skill that can be developed? Think about that for a second. Do you believe that you can develop your leadership skills over time? I believe that's a valid question to ask. And I don't know if everyone believes that. I think there are still people out there that believe that leadership is, some people believe that, you're kind of born with a set of leadership traits and skills. They still call this the great man theory. It's a active theory. I think it's lost a lot of steam, but in an academic setting, for example, in my graduate leadership studies at Gonzaga, we discussed the great man theory. It was one of the, leadership theories that have been out there for a long time. So, and then reflection, through reflection and self-reflection, can we better our technical competence? Can we better our leadership competence? Okay, so the next questions I have up here, can we deepen our understanding of the relationship between technical competence and leadership competence? And again, Leadosophy assumes that there's a symbiotic relationship between technical competence and leadership competence. So again, we're digging up some of my assumptions. I am assuming right off the bat that there are relationships between leadership competence and technical competence. Again, I want to reemphasize, I think you can have technical competence without leadership competence, but I don't think the opposite is true. Okay, so kind of the last couple questions here up on the screen. Why are we placed in positions of leadership? Is it because we have accumulated a body of knowledge? We have developed a constellation of skill sets in our position? What about our treatment of others? Have we demonstrated that we can treat others well, that we can lead others to a common set of goals? What about our ability to see the bigger pictures? Is that why we have been placed in a leadership position? And all those questions that I talked about, body of knowledge, constellation of skill sets, does that go to the core of technical competence? Here again, this relationship that I don't know if we can totally separate. That is what continually comes to mind for me. All right. So here we go. I got up on the screen the shipbuilder. This is a little slide I put together. It's a cyclical metaphor. A cyclical metaphor. Leadosophy likes metaphors. They're very descriptive, very visionary. I think it helps grasp abstract concepts a little better. Gives the abstractness a little teeth. A cyclical metaphor for the leader-follower development. So the first of these three cycles I call the road to competence. The road to competence. How do we become competent in craft? Whether you're a nurse, whether you are a blacksmith, whether you are a professional skateboarder. How did our road to competence begin? What did that journey look like? Was it a solo idea in the beginning? Did someone else pull us along and say, hey, let's do this. Let's become, great skateboarders, whatever it may be, right? So I asked the question, how did you get your start? And going back to the shipbuilder analogy, right? How do you become a competent shipbuilder? Well, the first question I ask is, can you build a ship? Can you produce a seaworthy vessel, a seaworthy ship? That seems like a legitimate question, right? Let's replace ship with a group of people, a group of followers. The road to competence as a leader. Can you produce followers that are competent? That's what I think about. Can you even gain a following? That's probably the first question you should ask. And when Leadosophy asks that question, can you gain a following? The first thing I think of is, why do people want to follow you? Are they following you for a body of knowledge that you possess? You have a certain amount of information that people seek from you. Again, this is moving in the direction of technical competence. You're using your leadership qualities to impart that knowledge on others. They seek your leadership for your knowledge. And that's one example I'm thinking about. There's probably others, but again, you may be thinking of other things in your day-to-day life, whether it's in the community, that applies. Back to this idea of road to competence. Can you reproduce and refine your techniques? Again, we are gaining technical competence, right? And if we apply that to leadership competence, are you reproducing results in your followers? Are you trying to refine your leadership techniques? Why do we read leadership books? We try to get different nuggets of information, right? This goes back to the theory side of leadership and the reflection side and the self-reflection. Why are we reading leadership publications, academic articles about leadership? We're trying to refine our techniques. We're trying to jettison ideas that don't work, whether they're in the technical competence side or they're on the leadership side. And one of the most important questions, which we've already talked about on the road to competence, do you have apprentices who seek to learn your ways? Have you gained a following? Again, technical competence and leadership competence become joined here, right? I will argue, and I think I made this argument last week on the last Leadosophy on the Road episode, that you can have a shipbuilder master and an apprentice, and that shipbuilding master may not be very good, may not have very good set of relationship skills, social skills, may not be very good at explaining things, may not even treat others well, but that leadership master, that shipbuilding master, may still have an apprentice who seeks his or her leadership because of the skills that he or she may gain from that, the benefits from that relationship, that dyadic relationship between two people. Now, all things being equal, and I may have also talked about this last week, but I think it's important to bring this idea up again because it may help understand the difference of what an effective leader brings to the table. Two master shipbuilders, one apprentice. The one apprentice may want to follow the master shipbuilder who treats that person better, right? The golden rule, the master shipbuilder who thinks, hey, I'm going to treat this person how I want to be treated. And the other master shipbuilder is just a complete a-hole, right? But then again, there's always going to be instances out there where someone follows another person despite being treated bad. It happens a lot. I've seen it. All right, so the next part of this cycle, so we've talked about the road to competence, number one. The second part of this cycle is the pursuit of knowledge, right? This is the road to mastery. The pursuit of knowledge is the road to mastery. So competence is one part, right? The road to competence. But when you go beyond competence to mastery, I think about, do you seek out better ways to build the ship? Is your mind open to different building techniques? And do you view the learning process as never ending? It's a never ending journey. The pursuit of mastery is unbounded. You put no limitations on the amount of knowledge you will seek to become a master of craft, to become so technically competent that everybody wants to gravitate towards your leadership because of the knowledge, the body of knowledge that you have accumulated. And again, Leadosophy gets a little murky on its idea of, can you pursue mastery of leadership competence? I don't know the answer to that. I think that question is more difficult to unpack. And one of the reasons I say that is because there are many leadership positions out there where a leader is put in a position, but you have many leadership situations where someone emerges into a leadership role and they didn't expect it. They call this the situational leader. Maybe they are not in a designated leadership position, but due to a series of events, whether fortunate or unfortunate, a person finds him or herself in this role to lead others, right? So, are they pursuing mastery of leadership when they didn't even expect to be in a leadership role? Again, I don't know quite the answer to that question. I firmly believe you can seek mastery of a technical craft, whether it's mastery of the golf swing or mastery of skateboarding or surfing or being a knitter of fine scarves. You can pursue mastery of these. What about leadership? What about being a sort of master leader? I don't know. It sounds a little egotistical in my book. I don't think Leadosophy likes that as well. Maybe an idea we can come back to another episode. All right, and the last part of this cycle. So we've talked about two parts of the cycle: the road to competence, the pursuit of knowledge. The technical competent person becomes pursuing a mastery of craft. And now we get into the more leadership follower dynamic, and that's the joy of empowerment. Again, you can see this on the screen if you're watching. Back to the shipbuilder analogy. If you are the master shipbuilder, or let's just call it the technically competent shipbuilder because you have shown that you can produce a seaworthy vessel, do you show others how to build a ship? Can you, or are you willing to set someone else on the road to competence, right? Do you give others the freedom to create and explore new ideas and techniques? And I think this is important because this joy of empowerment, when you start empowering others, when you start diffusing your knowledge to others, you start showing others your entire body of knowledge. You let them explore everything you know, right? I think this is very important. You are now developing others in their pursuit to competence and then mastery. Again, assuming that they're in, whatever role they are, in a willing fashion and not forced to be whatever. So those are the three parts of the cycle: the road to competence, the pursuit of knowledge, and the joy of empowerment. In this next slide, I'm going to talk about how this cycle reinforces itself and the importance of it. And we have some questions up here. We have some different ideas, right? So I talked about that cycle. I believe it's reinforcing. This is when learning becomes collective. It's a collective learning endeavor. As leaders mentor followers, again, this is technical craft and leadership modeling. Knowledge is reinforced or jettisoned through feedback loops. As the follower gains competence, he or she can become the leader in a reversal of roles. Have you ever been in a situation where someone you have mentored suddenly becomes the person who is mentoring you? I can think of many instances, especially in my leadership or my military career, where I sat back and learned from others. That was sort of that trial and error endeavor where some things you have done or maybe not done maybe led to some failure, and someone else kind of maybe someone below you, maybe a follower said, hey, have you looked at this a little different? And you're like, man, that's actually a really good idea. Let's make a course correction and go this way. Let's change the way we build this ship based on what you've learned, what I've taught you and your own ideas. I like what you're doing, right? So then your own, as a leader, your own knowledge gets bolstered because of that, because of you becoming a person who is being mentored, because you have suddenly become the follower, not the leader. Your knowledge, your body of knowledge increases. Again, the cycle of leadership follower development is nonlinear. It's a nonlinear cycle. No two paths are identical. There is no straight road to competence. And I think leadership competence and technical competence applies. There's no straight path to the pursuit of mastery. You're going to have setbacks, workarounds. Especially in technical competence, it's a tinkering, it's a trial and error. You're being tenacious what you do. You have to have patience because of the setbacks you're going to have. Again, you may take a couple steps forward and you get knocked back 3 or 4 steps. That is learning a craft, right? And I put up there, it's a heuristic endeavor. It's a hands-on experience. Leadosophy places full emphasis on the hands-on part, the practice part of Leadosophy. You have reflection, you have theory, you have practice. Leadosophy places the highest importance on practice, doing the job, actually leading in the field, in your job, in the community. There's no better way of becoming a better leader if you believe leadership is a skill than actually practicing leadership, being placed or thrusted into that role of leadership. And again, this cycle is a theoretical endeavor and a reflective endeavor. As you pursue mastery, you are trying to understand theory, whether it's in your technical craft or leadership theory more generally. Okay, leadership competence. Does it equal technical competence? Or again, are they two separate ideas with a relationship kind of in the middle where they kind of meet? I don't know if there's an actual one-to-one equality between leadership and competence, but Leadosophy explores the similarities and differences between leadership development and technical competence development. This is the search for the truth versus deepening our understanding and exploring meaning between both concepts. We should ask more questions. We should dialogue more, not have a discussion per se. Discussion, kind of the back and forth, I don't know if there's a whole lot of listening when you have a discussion, but when you have a dialogue, it's a deeper conversation with more meaning involved. We should have more dialogic opportunities to discover this relationship between leadership competence and technical competence. And how are we measuring the effectiveness of leadership competence or technical competence? Is it results-based? If we go back to the ship metaphor, how many ships are we producing? How many followers are we producing? How many followers do we have? And when I say how many followers do we have? I think Leadosophy believes in followers that are there willingly. I think that's an important distinction to be made between someone who has to follow you and someone who is following you willingly, right? I think there's a difference. Again, some other things, as far as measuring effectiveness, especially technical competence, this may be financial results in your job. Maybe you're a CEO. It could be financial results. What's the organizational culture in your business? I think that's a way to measure effectiveness, both of technical competence and leadership competence. Are you cultivating relationships? This applies more to the leadership competence side. Are you able to strengthen and bolster relationships within your sphere of influence of people who are following you? And that goes without saying that if you are developing those relationships, are you developing the follower competence, their competence, both technically and from a leadership role? Are you showing others how to be better leaders? Are you modeling well? Some things to think about. And then I think a great way to measure effectiveness from a leadership competence standpoint is, I call it KTR. It's knowledge, tools, and resources. This is what you as a leader are providing the people around you. You are providing them knowledge and information. You are giving them tools to be successful at their job, to be successful in the community. You are removing barriers as well. I think that's part of the tools. You are removing barriers from them. And then you're giving them the resources they need to be effective, both from a technical competence standpoint and from a leadership competence standpoint. So again, you can, if you're watching, you can see these 4 different ideas play out on the screen. So that's what we want to discuss here on Leadosophy. This was kind of a deeper dive into the leadership competence, technical competence side. I think this, for me, this was a good, both reflective and self-reflective mission for me today to kind of maybe reinforce some ideas that I was thinking about on foot in the state park last week. And I could kind of put some of my ideas on the screen here for others to see what Leadosophy is thinking about. So I hope you enjoyed that deep dive into leadership competence and technical competence. Again, if you come away with anything from this, I would ask to maybe try to re-examine this idea of technical competence versus leadership competence. And I don't mean in like pitting the two ideas together. I just mean in the idea of understanding maybe how they differ and then where that relationship overlaps between two of them. At the end of the day, Leadosophy believes that leaders are followed because they bring something to the table. And again, they can have a set of relationship skills. They can be empathetic. They can treat other people well. But at the end of the day, there's a large amount of leaders who have followers because of the knowledge they have of X, Y, or Z, because of their technical competence. And again, whether that's navigating the pitfalls of life or the pitfalls of the workplace or the pitfalls of starting a community project, everybody brings a set of information and knowledge to the table. Again, that's why learning is collective. So there you have it. This episode of Leadosophy. Remember, Leadosophy is about using the tools of philosophical thought to deepen our understanding of leadership. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching and listening to another episode of Leadosophy. If you liked what you heard today, hit that subscribe button and check out Leadosophy.com and learn more about Tim's ideas on philosophy and leadership. We'll see you next time.